I really liked hearing how React developed, and they didn't really call it the design process, but seeing the design process. So React was initially created by an engineer at Facebook by the name of Jordan Welk. And it was just super fascinating to me, the initial story. So it sounds like they had been doing a lot more of the front end application centric things at Facebook, and they had some solutions. One which was called Bolt, like bolted a bunch of stuff together type of thing. And Jordan had come up with essentially their own idea of like how things could be done better. And it was, I don't know, it didn't say where Jordan got these ideas, but essentially it was the idea for React. Let's blow away the DOM and just replace it with whatever the state is, instead of trying to use two-way data bindings to keep things in sync. And so Jordan was the one that initially created it. It sounds like they were at Facebook trying to evangelize it more or less and get people to use it there. But from a design perspective, I think this is really interesting because it's not like what I was seeing from a lot of the top-down approaches that other companies were coming out with. This was somebody at Facebook that was like, hey, I just kind of made this thing organically as a solution to a real problem that we actually have. And it sounds like they just started trying to use it within Facebook in some areas and working with other people and trying to get them to use it. And so from a design perspective, I think this is the right place to start, a bottom-up perspective, as me and other people like to say. It's organic, it's bottom-up, and Jordan and some other people then started working with React and trying to actually bring React more into Facebook. But it wasn't like somebody high up in the company was like, hey, we need this new solution that's going to solve all of our problems. No, instead, it was just this organic thing that came from trying to solve an actual problem and just iterating on it and trying to make it better and better and fit into the problems they were having at Facebook. And I think this leads to much better products, much better engineering, much better design than when you have somebody at the top be like, oh yeah, I heard our current solution has lots of problems, so I'm creating a team to just come up with a solution. They're going to put their heads down for a year, come up with a great solution, and we're all going to adopt it. I think those solutions are usually really bad for many reasons. Designed by committee, and you're not really learning as you develop it. I think this approach that I'm hearing from the documentary was way more organic, as the team just struggled to figure out like, oh, what is it that we created? How does it work? And that was also really interesting to me, talking about how, like, one of the people, I forget their name, was like, yeah, so I was like, wow, this is way out there, and I'm not really familiar with it, but I want to understand it better. So they went through and like created a glossary of terms, and essentially it sounds like tried to understand the design of it and how it worked. And then they would go to Jordan and other people that were actually using React within Facebook and being like, hey, does this match? Is this what you think of it as? Am I getting this right? And they would correct them and help them. But I think this was really, really great. This is what it's like, to me, this is just so exciting, as like, it's like the type of good design that I really like to see. You start by creating, you start by trying it, you gain some experience, but at this point, things are not it's going to be messy. It's not going to be super well designed, but it's going to be real, and it actually solves a real problem. And then you come in and you're like, okay, what did I actually build? What are the abstractions here? How do I actually make this good design? And it sounds like this is the process that just sort of happened organically at Facebook. Another one of the engineers is just like, yeah, I'm going to try to understand this. And they broke it down into all these terms and concepts. And from there, they took it and actually refined it. They took that feedback and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, so we can improve this. And it sounds like they completely changed the API based on this process. And to me, this is brilliant. And a large part, I suspect, of why React is as good as it is. Going through this process, this is good design process in my experience. I think it's really, and I think I'm emphasizing this because it's really easy to not do because it's hard to do. So the first hard step is just building it and making it work and actually using it. That first bottom-up organic step is not easy either. But it's really hard to then go from that and to create something coherent and usable by other people on the team, other companies, whatever. Like that part of actually distilling it into something other people can learn easily and apply to their own projects, that's also really, really difficult. And then to go from that and actually apply the things they learn to improve the API and improve the product, that's the next third hard step. And it seems like that's what they all did sort of organically. And the story is really interesting. Definitely check out the documentary because they go into a lot of the personnel issues around it and, how does this interact with like management and a product? And I found that story really fascinating. So definitely check that out. But yeah, overall, it was just super fascinating to me to hear this sort of initial design process. Like to me, if maybe I should talk about this more, but it just indicates really good bottom-up design, which is what I call this. And so it was really fun to hear the story of how they were doing this in practice and actually applying it. And I think there's a lot that even I learned from that, like especially when it comes to interacting with people and getting solutions figured out. It sounds like there was a lot of internal almost turmoil about like, oh, do we adopt React? Do we use React? What do we do with React? It's kind of out there. Should we use these other solutions? And seeing the culture that they had there in terms of like, yeah, let's work this out. Let's sit down together. Let's figure out these solutions. It was really encouraging. And yeah, if you're interested in what I think a good design process looks like, it's definitely a good place to start. And the next really cool thing to me was I'll talk more about the open sourcing it a little bit later, but they went through and open sourced it. And the next big step that is also really hard to do that I feel like a lot of people don't do, whether it's internal or external companies, is they open sourced it and they had some initial users, one by the name of Sophie Alpert at Khan Academy, who was like, oh yeah, they were unlike me. They actually looked at it and learned it. And they were like, yeah, this is good. I want to use this. But they also had a lot of good feedback for the team. And the React team apparently actually listened to the feedback and incorporated it. And they emphasize like, yeah, this feedback was critical. Like we really needed this feedback. And what I usually see with big companies open sourcing projects like this is they're not as receptive to this type of feedback. They're like, nah, we make it work for our company and we don't really care about the wider community. We're just doing our thing and that's how it is. They were like, no, this is great. Let's actually incorporate this feedback. And so working with Sophie Alpert, who they eventually, I believe, hired for the React team, I think, were able to take this design process and just move it to that sort of final stage in the initial development, which is incorporating external feedback. And I don't think I can overemphasize this enough. If you're at a big company or a small company or you're open sourcing something, it, I guess, technically in some rare cases has worked where people just ignore the wider community and something still takes off. But if you want it to be actually good, getting more experience from more people in different situations, like what it was developed for at Facebook probably covered a lot of different use cases, but not all of them. And so getting external use cases, external feedback is critical to creating good design. So it was really fun watching the documentary to me and hearing this experience and being like, yeah, we learned a lot and it was really important. And I think it also just shows like a really good culture, at least around this team and the related teams at Facebook. One really interesting story to me from the documentary was how they're talking about like, oh, we want to try this out. I think it was for like the ads team. But the ads team was like, oh, we're going to have to like stop feature development for months for us to try out React and see if it really is better than our current solutions. And that was the moneymaker at Facebook. And so it was seeming like, we can't do that. And someone higher up in the company was like, well, if you guys need to do that, then you need to do that. We want a good solution here. So to me, that also showed actually good culture and a good, like, that's the culture you want at your company. There's a time and place in capitalism where you just have to make money. But if you're in a position where you can invest in that way, a good culture, good company will be like, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to invest. We're going to make things better. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to choose good design. So it was really cool to me to see that coming out of this project at Facebook. And this wasn't really included in the documentary per se, but I think this sort of healthy culture that comes out of the documentary also is reflected in the fact that React is still, I think, doing a pretty good job of listening to community feedback and trying to create a good general solution, not just a solution for Facebook. And I think this just really shows through in all of their efforts. They're not necessarily always trying to create the most popular thing per se. They're still, it seems like, trying to create something good while also listening to community feedback, which is awesome in my opinion.